Welcome to Be a Voice. This is Brick Carpenter on Usula Media. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm excited about my show because I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine and also somebody who is highly respected in the community on many levels. I am sitting here today with my friend Dave Malloy. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Brett. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Doc. How are you?
I'm good. No complaints.
Thanks for joining me. I know you have such a busy schedule and busy life.
Look, to be honest, it's a pleasure to be welcomed anywhere. It was a certain point in my life where I would regularly hear people say, please, for the love of God, don't come back. So it's nice to be welcomed anywhere.
I'm sure there's some people out there that still say that, Dave.
On occasion, I'm sure.
I may have said that once or twice. No, not at all. I never said that, Dave. Not at all.
All good.
But you know, I'm just a little bitter because today, you know, I'm thinking to myself, here we are in May, and I'm like projecting in myself that we should be in this warmer weather, you know, and I'm actually like cold. I have the heat on at home.
Yeah.
I'm like this big wimp. I've been turning heat on at night. I'm like, oh, it's cold. So I go over and I crank it.
Well, I mean, especially considering this past winter that we all just went through, I'll take this versus 47 or 48 consecutive days of like freezing cold weather that we went through in the winter. So
yeah.
I'll take what I can get.
That's true. That's true. Just, you know, something from a Monday here to complain about
Yeah.
for me. But anyway, Dave, so I've known you. I've known you for years. I've connected with you. I connected you because we are both in recovery. You are a person in long-term recovery, and you just celebrated an anniversary.
Yes.
How many years do you have?
So my recovery began on April 23rd of 2004.
22 years.
Yes.
22 years you've had in recovery.
Yep.
Some people can't even go 22 days. 22 minutes.
Well, I spent a good, I wouldn't say 22 years, but I spent quite a long period of time. Luckily, I couldn't get 22 minutes. So one thing I will say about April 23rd of 2004 was I didn't get up that morning and make a decision to seek help. That morning I woke up, if I can paint a picture of like what my life was looking like on that day, I was living in a tent.
Yeah, because 22 years ago?
Yeah, it's 22 years ago, but it's etched in my mind.
Go ahead.
I was living in a tent in a soccer field next to a treatment center called Self-Help Movement up at Southampton and Roosevelt Boulevard. There's like a little soccer field there. I had, and I'm sure we'll get into this, my story, but like I became all the things I never thought I would become, and I did all the things I never thought I would do. At the very end, I was a panhandler. The term that we used to use in my day was flying a sign. Flying a sign. So I had a sign. I would stand on the boulevard and beg for, you know, just a homeless need help or whatever.
Did you have your spot on the boulevard?
Yeah, well, I moved around a bit.
You did?
I had some struggles with certain law enforcement types that would kind of give me a hard time. So I'd move around.
Really?
Southampton and the boulevard, Somerdale and the boulevard. I'm sure I'll talk about that.
And this is 22 years ago. You were having law enforcement issues. People were there.
Yeah, they would. I had certain, and it's funny. I've tried to seek him out. His name was Officer Milgram. I often think about him because he was like my nemesis. I would know his schedule, know when he was working. I would see him in one path of the boulevard. And I knew that he was going to circle around, so I would like duck behind a tree or shoot off on a side street.
So you were like strategically playing chess with Officer Milgram.
Yes.
Have you ever seen him after this?
No. I've actively tried. I'm assuming by this point he's retired. But I've asked multiple friends in the police department. Nobody
knows who he is.
He was in the 2nd District, up and down a boulevard.
So if Officer Milgram, for some reason, hears this from the PPD from 22 plus years ago,
yep.
You know, check him out.
I would say from 97 until about 2004.
So you were unsheltered at that point, 97 to 2004?
Yes.
So 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years in a tent on the boulevard or roaming around?
All over.
I mean, so you're a nomad.
I'll be honest. There were periods where I would get like somebody would let me stay on their couch or somebody would come by. I remember one particular year, a trucker, I was standing at Street Road and I-95 on the exit ramp. Little side note, it felt like the farther north I went in the city, the better the money was. So, and at one point I ended up on Street Road on the exit ramp off of 95 and Street Road. And there was a trucker.
Busy.
There was a trucker there that put me in the Radford Hotel. He bought me a hotel room for the weekend. It was Super Bowl weekend. So I remember, and you got to understand the mindset of living that life. There's nothing happy about it. There's nothing enjoyable about it. I had developed these tendencies to like make it okay for myself. So I would like I'd be standing there with my sign and I would pick a random car out. And I could just, like in my head, I could pretend like I was living their life. And almost like I would just transport myself into their car and like I'm driving home from work and I'm going to go in and have dinner with my wife and talk to my kids about their soccer practice. Anything to get out of the mundane existence that I was living in.
Wow. It's interesting because of the work that I do and, the work that you do and, knowing the individuals that are out there nowadays that do, I never thought about stuff like that.
It is, I think about it and I know, we started just talking about that last day.
Yeah, no, listen, the talks go anywhere. It's a tangent. Don't even worry.
What
There's
I'll
no
tell
set
you,
itinerary here.
What I'll tell you about that morning was I had $27.40. And in my mind, I wanted to get another $2.60.
$30.
So that I could have a somewhat respectable wake-up shot. That's where my head was. And I got up that morning, and one of the challenges that I was dealing with at the time was there was a Russian family that sold flowers on that corner. Now, whenever that guy was there selling flowers, it would mess up my hustle because nobody would give me money because they would see him. So this is like, I share partially I share that because it's comical. Like in my head, this was like a big corporate struggle. This was like CVS and Rite Aid fighting over something and like
territory,
like a big struggle.
Turf wars.
And the truth of the matter is, it was an immigrant and a homeless guy fighting over a street corner that isn't even theirs. But my musing, my thought process was interrupted. I was sitting on this bench right where the bus comes, and there was a park ranger that came by. It was like a dune buggy, and apparently they were cleaning up that area. And he asked me my name. And because I had been living off the grid for so many years, I knew that I had all kinds of legal issues. So I gave him a fake name. He somehow, with some kind of supercomputer that he had in that thing, figured out everything about me. And look, I chuckle and I share this often. Somebody could have been standing there when this whole thing went down, when he, because then he came back and said, you have all these warrants, we're going to take you into custody. I had no idea that was one of the single greatest days of my life. Obviously, having kids now, I have much better experiences since then. That day changed my life.
April 23rd.
April 23rd of 2004.
An officer pulled up to you. You gave him a fake name.
And look,
do you remember the name you gave him?
Yes. It was Brian Gannon, who I since found. He was a kid I went to high school with. It never got traced back to him.
How the hell would he found you from Brian Gannon to Dave Malloy?
Because I'd used that name a bunch of times.
Oh, so it was an alias.
Yes.
You had used somebody from high school as an alias.
Yes, exactly.
Was this a friend of yours?
An acquaintance. Somebody I went to high school with. Yeah.
Have you seen Brian Gannon since then?
We've had one interaction since, and it was, wishing me the best. I said the same to him, kind of thing.
Did he know you were using his name?
It never really was his name because it was all my other identity.
It wasn't his identity. You just used the name.
Exactly.
You picked that name.
Yep.
I get it. It's
and it was in the 90s. So like the way it was explained to me, whenever I was arrested in Philadelphia, I didn't know this when I gave it. But anytime that I was arrested, that's the name that comes back. Like even to now. And I know my PP number. I've seen my mugshots. But like it comes up and now it tracks back to but it says my name as an alias. But because that was the first name that I ever used in Philadelphia.
So some of them, Dave Malloy is an alias on some of them.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah,
You know,
they just said whenever you're free, this is the name that's going to come back.
Wow. All right. So for all these years, you've been off the grid. You were using different names when the police were busting you, and you had warrants out for you. Very, you know, I'd like to say this is a very uncommon situation, but it's not. It's a very common situation for people who are afflicted with, you know, not just addiction, but mental health goes along with this too.
100%.
So,
100%.
you know, this was also April 23rd was like your day of reckoning.
It was the single, when I think back on it, I joke, but like I tell people all the time in the recovering community, like I didn't have any say on that being the day. Like they took me in, he took me in this dune buggy all the way down the boulevard. It had to take me to the 8th district. The video court was down. So he had to take me all the way down to the 15th district. It was like everybody knew me. I was like a celebrity on the damn boulevard. So they're like, we're pulling into like on Levick there where the 15th and the 2nd used to be before the new one got built. Yep. We're pulling in and like all the cops are out. Like they see me and they're like, what'd you get him for? Fishing without a license, making all these jokes.
In a dune buggy.
Yeah. And they took me in.
That's crazy.
And what I'll tell you is, and I don't say this with any humor, I was so dirty. And I used to think to myself, this is how the mind works. Because you know, I used to joke with people that like as those of us in addiction and alcoholism, we're like Marines. One of the sayings that Marines have is we improvise, we adapt, and we overcome. Like no matter what situation I was put in my years of substance use and like being homeless and living out there, I would just make it work. So when I got to the jail, in my mind, they put me in my own cell because I'm the man. I run the jail. That's what my mind told me. The reality is they put me in my own cell because if they put me with the general population, they would have beat the living shit out of me. I probably hadn't bathed in close to a year. When they took me in to get a shower, the shirt that I was wearing fell apart. I mean, it was stuck to my back. Like it literally, I went to take it off and like there was a big chunk of it was just on my back. I was a mess. The way of living and you don't realize like that has impact over time. Like I would go into a store and I'm used to like you go into a store and people follow you around because they don't want you to steal something. But it had gotten so bad for me. They were following me around with like deodorizer because I was like stinking the joint
so
up.
Bad.
You know what I mean? I couldn't, if I wanted to get on the bus, I needed to find a bus stop where there wasn't anybody at or where there was other people at. Because if a bus driver saw me by myself waiting for the bus, they wouldn't stop. And you don't realize it, but as a human being, that takes its toll on you over time.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
I think about certain, and yeah, I was in that tent on the boulevard, but like I was all over the city. There was a period of time that I was down in Center City. There was a period of time that I would like, there was like these little side stairs that went in around like Market East Station, right around there, like around 7th Street. And we would all go in there at night and we'd all be sleeping. And every morning it was like clockwork.
By the Burger King.
The police would come in, hit us on the bottom of our feet with, like, all right, guys, you know, they would clear us out before rush hour started. Mm-hmm. And I can remember some mornings on the outside chance that nobody was going to stop. I can remember laying there and you almost like I could see it. I'd be looking up and somebody would be stepping over me. And I can remember the feeling of like seeing their face as they look down on me as they're walking by. That stuff has an impact on you as a human over time. And I'll be honest, I think we started this about like how you and I have become such close friends and people, you know, in the recovery community, people tend to look up to you. But I don't ever want to forget that there was a point in time in my life when I was looked down
Yeah,
upon.
well, I say
And-
that all the time. People walk by us like we're invisible.
Yep.
Or that they look at us like we're just the lowest when we were out there on the street.
And it almost feels to me at times like there was a part of me that you get comfortable in that because guess what? As the dirty homeless guy, there is no it's like nobody's expecting anything of you. You know what I mean? I didn't have to worry about like a schedule or being anywhere. Like I made my, if I wanted to go out and panhandle at 8 a.m, I could. If I slept an extra hour, all right, I got out there at 9. No big deal.
How old were you on April 23rd, 2004? What age were you then?
I was 30, soon to be 31.
Okay. And you were homeless for 7 years. So
Yeah, 7 or 8. I mean, give or take. So
formative years of life.
yeah, and I'll back it up a bit. So my experience recovery wise, I chuckle sometimes because I have a 15-year-old son, and by the time that I was 15, I had already been in 2 rehabs, and I was about 6 months short of being sentenced to juvenile life. So as a kid, I developed I'm sure it's going to come out at some point. I'm an old dirty hippie. So like as a kid, I was introduced to LSD when I was like 12, and I immediately was drawn to the Grateful Dead, became like a hippie, learned how to tie-dye t-shirts. Like that was my whole identity.
At 12 years of age, you became a Deadhead.
Yeah.
And I know you're a Deadhead because
Yeah.
we've seen, we've seen shows
We've
together
had
here.
various
And,
encounters.
Yes.
But-
But 12 years of age.
Yeah.
LSD.
And by 15, I was already in and out of treatment. I'd already had some run-ins with the law, shoplifting. At the age of 16, I was sentenced to juvenile life for possessing a very large amount of LSD.
Were you selling as well then?
Yes.
Where
And
were you from? Where are you from?
I'm originally from just outside of Ocean City, New Jersey, in a town called Linwood.
Oh, yeah.
Right over the bridge, right next to Summers Point, next town over from Summers Point.
And then you left there when?
So that's where it gets interesting. So I entered recovery for the first time. I was sent to juvenile life.
And this is in New Jersey? All this was unfolding in Jersey?
Yeah, all of this was in Jersey.
Were you doing this in Atlantic City or are you doing it in like?
No, Ocean City and Linwood, a lot in my high school.
Oh.
But long and short of it is, I had, for lack of better words, I was a kid, right? And I met this girl, and I wanted to show off. I wanted her to think that I was the guy. And to be honest with you, Brett, I wasn't made for drug dealing. Because, like, the thing with drug dealing is, like, if you give somebody something on the eye this week and they don't pay you back the next week, you're supposed to go be, physical and, like, do something about it. I was not a good businessman. So, and it was all about ego. I wanted people to think that I was that. I wanted you to think that I was that guy. That was the whole reason that I was doing it. And I met this girl, and I was like showing off because I wanted her to think I was like the cool hip guy or whatever. And I made a bunch of deals in front of her, and turns out she was a narc. She was a cop. So I might as well get into the story. So Good Friday of 1989, I'm sitting, don't laugh, but I used to enjoy sitting with my father, God rest his soul, but we loved All in the Family and Three's Company. We're sitting he's in his little Archie chair. I'm sitting next to him. I'm impaired. And there's a knock at the door. It's Good Friday.
I'm impaired.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 15, about to be 16.
Impaired by where
LSD.
So at that point, was it just LSD, Dave?
Yes. Yeah, it was
Okay.
LSD, a little bit of weed,
Wow.
some booze. But,
Okay, but the drug at that point was the LSD.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a knock at the door. I go over and answer the door, and I see her. She's at the door. And what I don't see is like what's behind her.
Had she been at your house before?
No.
So you're like, oh my gosh, she found me.
I just met her like 2 days before.
You're like, oh wow, you found me at home.
Yeah, it was like the day.
She loves me.
I'm thinking of my child, like it was the day before spring break because it was Good Friday. So like that Wednesday, it's like a half day at school, and I had somebody driving me around to drop drugs off to all these different places, and she was, because I was showing off. So she was at my door, and in my head, I'm like, she wants me. Now, what I don't see is that like there's police standing right behind her. And look,
you were tripping at this time.
Yeah, there's certain things I'll never forget. One of the things, and it's a look that I was going to get really familiar with over the next 20 years of my life. And that look was my dad, who did one of these, like when all this was happening, because my dad got up and went to the door behind me. And as the police were like leading me out, he was like, that look of disappointment, like looking over his glasses, like, what did you do now? And that was the first real negative consequence that I had experienced.
Did your dad have any idea that you were doing any of this then?
Yeah, I'm sure he suspected it. There was like other weird things. And look, my dad led a sheltered life, and we could talk all day. But my father was, he was raised by Christian brothers. He was an orphan. My grandmother died of tuberculosis. And after she died of tuberculosis in the 30s, my grandfather, who was an alcoholic, he couldn't take it. He just got up and left my dad and his two brothers just alone. So my dad was put in an orphanage, raised by Christian brothers. When he got old enough to leave, it was all that he knew. He became a Christian brother and stayed there until he was in his 30s. Went to college, became a teacher, and was a teaching brother. They call him a brother of Christian instruction.
He was a very Christian man?
Yes.
And he liked Archie Bunker?
Yes.
I love this.
Yeah,
that right there in itself is awesome.
Listen, it is, I used to tease people like my father was basically a really, really nice version of Archie Bunker. Now, when my dad left the Christian Brotherhood, he became a high school teacher. Side note, he was so loved by like a lot of the kids. He was a teacher at Atlantic City High School. In my addiction, when I would end up in the Atlanta County Jail, I never had to worry about eating. Because once everybody knew that I was Don Malloy's son, everybody took care of me. So there was like some interesting things, but because of my dad's, the way he was brought up, he was very naive.
Okay.
So like at one point, I had one of my first jobs was washing dishes at a restaurant. And I think I passed out one night and I had a bag of weed on my chest. And I convinced him that it was oregano when it was not.
Nice.
I was like, it's from the restaurant. And listen, I share that, and we'll get into it, I'm sure. That was just my dad's. He was very just naive, led a very sheltered life, so he didn't know a lot of these things. But that was going to be the first of many times.
Did you use that to your benefit, knowing
100%.
that he was sheltered? That
100%.
As a person with addiction, did you recognize at that age when the cops were there and this woman was standing there? Did you realize that like there was something wrong at this point?
No, and I'm really glad that you asked that question, because a normal kid that didn't have what I have would have been like a clear red flag that I'm off track, that there's something wrong. And that didn't even register. And it was a big, listen, not to get into it, but like I was sentenced to juvenile life for that. I was in, and then they kind of transitioned me over to a place called The Bridge in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I'm a graduate of The Bridge. I love that.
How long were you in
place.
juvenile life for?
I graduated from The Bridge right at my 18th birthday.
18.
Yeah.
So you were there from the age of 15?
No, I originally started in placement in Jersey, and that's kind of, so I was in a place called Jamesburg, which is known as like, they call it Gladiator School. And these are the kind of things like
a Glen Mills?
Exactly. Normal person would be in that situation because you go in there and you like stand on they weigh you and they house you based on what you weigh.
That way you have a fighting chance.
Right. You know what I mean? And like, I'm a little hippie kid from the boondocks.
And this is 15-year-old kids. This isn't like, people in their 28, 29, 30 who have done hard crimes at this point or whatever.
Yeah,
these are 15-year-old kids that they're weighing odds
these
like
kids
wrestling.
were pretty serious. Like some of the stuff that they were dealing with, it was pretty scary.
And you were there.
And it didn't even
for selling LSD.
And I was frightened the first day. I was a little bit less scared the second day. And the third day, I was meant to be there. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about we improvise, we adapt, we overcome. I started to learn, started to go to the law library. I started to advocate for some other kids that were in there that didn't know their rights. And then that was going to be a thing for me throughout my life in and out of county jails. I was the law library guy. You start to I got to get down to the law. Teach people, when I would be on State Road, I would teach them about Rule 1100. If you have, there's a certain amount of time that they need to bring your case to trial. And that was where it all started. At some point, I was called back in front of my judge and he said, look, we're going to let you finish your sentence in a treatment center. And that's when I was transitioned over.
How old were you then?
A little bit before my 17th birthday. So I spent about 14 months at the bridge. Total.
So you were basically in confinement those 17 months.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you went to treatment. Which is
yeah. So it was, I want to say it was about maybe 6 or 7 months that I was at Jamesburg, and then another 14 months that I was at the bridge.
So, 3 years of your life there. 3 years of your life, you were consumed in and out of the system.
Yep.
In and out of, centers, institutions, whatever the case may have been, wherever you were. When you got out at the age of 18.
So I actually did good until...
You know what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So I did good for almost 4 years. And I really built a beautiful external life for myself.
From 18 to 21, 22.
Yeah. I was living in Ocean City. I lived right on the beach. I had developed some friendships with people, the business people that kind of they were hey, and I live right near Ocean City. It was like a tourist trap. So I got a little space on the boardwalk where I could sell tie-dyes. And you got to remember something. This is in early 90s. It's a big deal. And tie-dyes, you could make them for $1.50, and you could sell them for $25 or $30 on the
That was all over the boardwalks back in the days. Everything was tie-wise. It still is in Wildwood.
And that was my thing. And I developed, and I was active in recovery. I had friends. I was doing things.
You're in recovery at this point where you start following the dead?
Off and on. Yeah, in recovery, there's a group called the Wharf Rats. I still attend, as I know you're aware. I some of the best shows I've seen were the ones that I can remember.
So from 18 about 21, 22, you were in recovery the whole time. You were sober?
Yeah, about,
clean.
Yeah.
I hate the word clean, as you know, but sober.
Here's the important thing, the distinction, is that I based my recovery on my external world. And I was convinced that the more that I arranged my external world, the better that it looked to the outside, that I was going to be okay. And I had all this money. I was paying rent. I would pay my rent in cash every month. It was $1,800 to live in this apartment on the boardwalk. I could flick a cigarette into the ocean from my deck. I'm aging myself, but back in the day, there used to be this old Milwaukee commercial where they say, it don't get no better than this. I know what that...
Did you used to drink Old Milwaukee back in the day?
I have, but I didn't enjoy it.
Oh my gosh! See, I'm even disappointed.
I was a Bass Ale guy when I drank. But in any event, the main point, the thing that I noticed the most was that it was all external. And what ended up happening to me as years went on is that the internal and the external were not matching up. And I started to have all of this internal turmoil and conflict. And I wasn't a good businessman. I didn't know about tax ID numbers and mercantile licenses and things that you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of getting taken advantage of by where I was renting my space from, because they saw the amount of money I was making. So they just slowly started jacking up my rent. based on and I didn't know I didn't know what I was doing. So I was engaged. I had this girlfriend. I couldn't be faithful to her. I was cheating on her. And my life was just in disarray. But in my mind, I kept thinking, I'm okay. Look at my external world.
You keep saying internal, external, and it reminds me of the fact that this is something that, I think we talked about on with when Steve Jackson was here. The internal and external, when we talk about that, it reminds me of the fact that we recognize and we want everybody to think that everything's okay, but we don't recognize the fact that we're still fucked up and we're still dealing with this mental health issue that we never addressed that caused us to be so fucked up. Is that what you're saying when you talk about the external and internal?
Well, I realized my recovery today, I know the truth. And the truth is that I will never, ever be able to fix the internal condition that I have by arranging my external world. It's like straightening your house, but shoving everything into a closet and shutting the door and forgetting about it and thinking. Which I have a lot of experience with that because I have 2 kids. It's, I clean my room and then all I got to do is
laundry. There you go. And I get that. And that's the same for me too. And that's the way I would think. Oh, look at me. I got it together. I got the nice sneakers down. I got this and I got that. And I'm driving a 92 Lexus and blah, blah, blah. But inside I'm so fucked up still. And I get that. So, okay. So I'm in recovery. Everything just kind of fell apart all at once. And now I'm going to say this and it's going to sound funny. But there was this a number of things that happened all at the same time that just kind of spiraled my life out of control. So, in December of, my mom had gotten sick. Jerry Garcia died. My mom died. Same year? All in the same span of time, all within 8 or 9 months of each other. And I to this, I can't remember if it was the Jerry Garcia dying first, then my mom, or if it was my mom. But both of those things were huge parts of my life, and this kind of harkens back to my father. So my mom was always a disciplinarian. Okay. My dad. So the best way I can explain my dad, I think it's the easiest way to explain it to him. If we were going to an arcade, my mom would give me and my brother each $1 and be like, all right, guys, you'll be good for an hour. And then as we were leaving, when she couldn't see him, my dad would be palming us each at 10. Do you know what I'm saying? Yep, I do. That's just, and part of it for me is, I know my dad because I've heard the stories. He lived in an orphanage, so he was committed 100%. He didn't want my brother and I to experience anything even remotely similar to it. So he went out of his way for stuff like that. But the bigger picture is, my dad was easy, and he was naive. And you knew how to play him. And you played him, right? And so when my mom passed, I didn't consciously say I'm just going to run roughshod over this dude, but that's what happened. And these are the things that I'm least proud of. But I also think it would be disingenuous of me to not talk about it. I basically pilfered thousands upon thousands, out of an account that my dad had. And it got so bad. And I remember these moments. It got so bad at one point, he came in and he's holding his bank statement and he's going, Dave, there was $19,000 in this account. And the bank statement that he's holding, it's got $30 in it. And as he's saying this to me, in my head, all I'm thinking about is how can I get that last 20 out of there? I had completely lost touch. And I don't want to be so presumptuous as to say that because I know I felt bad about that, but heroin numbs that. I would feel bad for 10 minutes. When did you get into heroin? When did you transition? So when I picked up, and I'm kind of jumping all over the place. No, that's all right. We always do. When I picked up, there's no set agenda. One of the nights, and I had, resumed, I was going back to the bar scene. And part of that deal was
I wasn't drinking like I used to. So I'm like, I gotta do something to like
You weren't drinking like you used to. Were you doing an LSD?
a little bit, but not like before.
Okay.
So I was like, I gotta find somebody that's got some Coke so I can keep drinking all night. And unbeknownst to me, and I'll never forget it, was in the bar of a bathroom of a bar called Schooners in Summers Point. There was a band playing, I think they were called the Rose Hill Band. And I remember as I was getting ready to snort this line, looking at it, thinking to myself, looks a little dark. And I had no idea.
It was crank?
It was heroin. I had no idea. And to be honest with you, it didn't register. Like all I knew was like I was doing dope. I don't like for the first couple weeks, it didn't register that like I was getting addicted to heroin. Like I wasn't even thinking. And I want to attribute some of that to just like the trauma of my mom recently died, like all the different things that were all going on at the same time. But I remember a certain day, and it was an old, I can't remember, I think it was the Magnificent Seven. I have a thing, I love like old black and white. And I remember seeing that it was coming on. It was like one of the movies, like I'm going to watch it every time it's on. And I remember thinking to myself, you ain't going to be able to watch this, Dave, because you're about to get sick. And because I started to notice what was coming. And my hustle was I would be the guy that would drive to Philly for everybody.
You were still in Jersey at this point.
Yeah, I'm still in Jersey.
Were you driving to Kensington for it?
Yeah.
So you knew about Kensington. You found Kensington.
Yep.
Did you know about it living in Jersey then, or was it after you started doing it? What age were you? 22 around this point? 23?
Yeah, somewhere in there. I mean, it gets hazy.
So you just were driving back. You were driving here, scoring, heading back.
Yep.
And you were outside Atlantic City, and you probably could have scored there somewhere.
But it was twice as expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And bigger hassles.
Exactly. It was bigger hassles.
So I've heard.
I could do this trip to Jersey or to Philly and make a little thing for myself. So that was my whole hustle. And then what started, it was very slow. Things were spiraling with my dad. I had friends in recovery that were approaching my father and like basically encouraging him to leave because like it was not going well. Like he kind of knew that I was off the grid, but there was nothing he could do about it. And look, I've done really good. I haven't cursed, but I'm about to.
You can.
I was a pussy. So this is the kind of things that I would do. I would steal his car. I would drive it to Philly. And instead of like just going back and being like, here's your keys, I would leave it and call him and just be like, the car's at the lot. Like, because I didn't want to see him or deal
You would steal his car and then call him and tell him where to pick it up?
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
It was horrible.
I mean, when you think about it, I mean.
The stuff, Britt, when I tell you, and it's cool, and I want to make sure I have time to talk about the experience of the amends process with my father. But
absolutely.
It was about 4 or 5 months where I was just all over the place. I literally think it was October, and then I was already in my first detox for heroin by like January. It was that fast. And then I was out. At some point in there was the lovely blizzard of 96. I think it was. I can't even. Sometimes I get hairy about the dates. But
well, look at it this way. 2004, that would have been 8 years later.
Yeah.
So is that when you started becoming homeless and going unsheltered?
Yeah, well, I started to, when I would come to Philly, I would stay a couple days and then I would come back.
I was going to ask you, is that how that ended up? Is that how you ended up on the streets? Because you just found how convenient it was here?
Listen, the best way I can explain it, I came here to cop one day and I never left.
Never left because it was so convenient.
But it was like slowly over time. Like I would come and stay 2 days.
Yes.
The day of that blizzard, now mind you, it was like every road is closed. Like I am sick as a dog in like a Oldsmobile Cutlass, like that, like barely getting over the Ben Franklin Bridge. I had to I'll never forget it. I had to park like when you get off the Ben Franklin and you turn on to 5th Street. I couldn't make it. The car was not moving. And then there was guys on like these weird, I almost want to call, they were like forklifts that they had snow plows attached to these forklifts. They pushed the car like up on a snowdrift. I ended up walking down Fifth Street, finding what I needed to farther down on Fifth Street. Like back then it was different. It wasn't all the way down. It was like 5th and Orkney, 5th and Dolphin up in that area.
I used to go to like 5th and Girard.
Yeah, it was like, wasn't as far down.
I used to go back to some of the bars right there in Girard.
So eventually one of those days I came into Philly and just never left.
Did you have your dad's car at the time when you came to Philly and never left?
No.
Okay.
There was another, talking about consequences, because like as this took hold, this heroin thing, I began to do things where like I could almost, it was like watching myself. It's like an out-of-body experience.
Oh, yeah.
I was really sick one day and I was just walking around the neighborhood like, what am I going to do? Because that's like the struggle, man. It's like a never-ending struggle. You get up on a day and you're like, how am I going to make this work? And I'm walking around one day and I saw this guy in a pickup truck at a 7-Eleven, and he got out of his car and he went into the 7-Eleven and it was running. And I literally would watch I went over, got in the car and just drove away. Drove it all the way to Philly. Now, like a really dumb criminal that I am, I thought I was like, man, I'll drive it back home and I'll leave it somewhere so I have
like you call your dad.
Well, I crashed the car on the expressway. Now, what do you think the odds are of this? I like nodded off, drove into oncoming traffic, had an accident. I hit, you can't make this shit up, I hit a state police tracking dog trainer who happened to have a tracking dog in his car. Mile marker 36, Windsor Township on the Atlantic City Expressway. I remember running into the woods. They followed me into the woods. And
you hit the car and you took off.
I jumped out the truck was like a pretzel. Like to get out of the truck, I had to get into the bed because the bed was like bent. It was a mess. I run into the woods. They find me. I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going to jail. Like it's over. They had to take me to the hospital at some point during the impact. And I'm not going to do it because I'll mess this microphone up. I still have the scar. There was a screwdriver loose in this guy's truck that impaled itself in my side. I didn't even know it was there. You
were running with the screwdriver?
Well, it had fallen out, but like when they finally got me, they were like, dude, what's all this blood? And then they were, I was lucky they didn't like attack me for like, oh, you junkie with your blood all over, because there was like a pool of blood in the back of this cop car. They took me to the hospital, and don't ask me how. I still, to this day, I think to myself, like, how? Because in my head, I'm like, this is it. It's over. This run is coming to an end. Because every run that I would go on always comes to an end with some getting locked up for something.
Mm-hmm.
They came and released me on my own recognizance, and I just had to show up for court in 5 days.
You're freaking kidding me. Get out of here.
Dead serious.
Did you make it to Kensington then?
Yeah, right after that, I eventually did.
Story of most people's lives.
Yeah.
So you were sent unsheltered for 7 years.
Yeah.
Unsheltered. You got this arrested then.
So I came to, this is like the best of my recollection. I was in an abandoned house, and I'm going to say the address, and you're going to chuckle because of the garden. I was in an abandoned house at Ruth and Clearfield. With, now back then it was different. Abandoned houses were like a thing. They were everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like today.
No.
And there was like 4 or 5 of us in there. And this one dude, I'll never forget it. He popped his head in. He threw a blank piece of cardboard at me. And he was like, yo, man, you better get yourself a sign. I don't know what else. Because I have tremendous love. And one of my closest friends was nicknamed Scrappy. This dude that I ran with and then did jail time with. I have tremendous respect for those guys. The dedication to the lifestyle, those scrappers, like, I ain't built like that, man. I'm sorry. That just seems like too much work. So I guess this dude knew that, and he was like, yo, you better get with it. So my first experience with panhandling, and this is another humorous thing, was right outside of Burns Tavern at Richmond and Westmoreland. I just walked out Richmond and Clearfield and just walked down. I was trying to figure out where to go, and I was like, this seems like a good spot. And within 5 minutes, somebody pulled up and handed me a $20 bill. So that became like my hustle. You know what I'm saying? That became my thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm trying to think. That was my first experience of panhandling. So like that had to be 97 when like, that was when like I can officially say to myself, like I was here. Now I want to shout out a couple people along that way that took care of me. Xavier and Father Mike from St. Francis Inn. And right around that time, I want to say it was around 99, was when the folks that run the Sarnelli house first came to Kensington. I don't know why. There were certain things I remember. I had developed scabies. I was living at this point, and I would just shift around from abandonminium to abandonminium. Mm-hmm. So I found this really low-key house on Salmon Street down like right under 95. And it was right around the time, I just remember, because the neighbors would let us with electric, because like it was me and another guy. They'd rather us be in there because we were heroin addicts. We had to bring all the drama. Like if it was like crackheads and meth heads. Yeah. They're taking apart washing machines.
They're not like us.
So they let us run, and I had a little black and white TV. I remember sitting in there right around the same time period watching about Columbine, because that was right when that school shooting happened. In like 99.
97, 98. Yeah.
And I went to the Catholic Workers Clinic that was attached to St. Francis, and they gave me a treatment because I had gotten scabies. That was just horrible. It was like one of the worst feelings of my, because like you can scratch all day long and you can't. It's under your skin. Mm-hmm. But they had this cream, but I was like, how am I supposed to do this? Because you got to leave it on for like 8 hours. I'm like, what am I going to wander around Kensington with no clothes on? And that's where Sarnelli House came in. Those guys let me do the treatment and stay there.
Nice.
Which was like
and
amazing.
The same place it's out on the avenue now?
I don't know. Sarnelli House at the time was down by Kensington Hospital.
Oh.
I don't know if they've moved since. This was like 20.
No, I mean they're right there. They're right there by the Rock now.
25 plus years ago. They used to have a one night a week, because I used to keep Tupperware. Like I had a whole route.
And pick it up as the food?
Yeah, they had taco night that was just outstanding. And it was so funny because I'd be at St. Francis like, all right, guys, I'm heading over to, taco night over there tonight. So I'll see. And I had like Tupperware, so I make sure that I had extra food.
So after 22 years in recovery, you made a name for yourself, but you also start a life for yourself. You have a wife who is an amazing chef. Hence the reason that,
And we're both in recovery.
And you're both in recovery. Yeah. And how does that work, having a wife that's in recovery?
So, listen, I think...
Because I just date normies.
One of the things that I'll tell you is it's a blessing to, like, know when we're both, look, raising kids and, like, having a relationship is not easy.
How old are your children, Dave?
So I have a 15-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter.
So, Dave, I mean, because... Shay's in recovery. You're in recovery. You both have addiction of some type. As we both know, addiction comes from genetics. You even talked about how one of your great-grandparents or whatever had, alcoholism.
Yep.
So when we talk about this, are either of you afraid or worried about your son and your daughter?
Yeah, I mean, we have conversations. I think the main thing for us is there's communication. I am not here to...
And your son and daughter know your lives.
Yeah, they
don't... Not what we're talking about now, but
they don't know some of the intimate details, but they do know, like, when I'm doing something recovery-oriented or what have you.
They understand the recovery part and all that.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, at 15, that's when you started, to get badass. You were committed.
Like, that's often what I think to myself, like, we're doing better than we think sometimes, because, like, I think back to when I was that age, and I'm like, wow.
So then, Dave, if you could go back to that age, say you go back to that 12-year-old Dave, before all the turmoil set in and before he discovered, Sugar Magnolia and all those good vibes and all that, what would you say to that 12-year-old Dave?
I'll be honest, and this is going to be shocking. I might not change a thing, because I think there's a reason for everything. Like, I chuckle sometimes. People, you talk to people in recovery and some dudes are like, I went to detox because the chick that I was trying to get with went to detox. She's dead. Guy's still sober. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are so many different reasons why, one of the things I've learned over the years is like, I can't question things. I think that a lot of the experiences that I've experienced make me who I am today. So who am I to go back and like try to undo that? Obviously, I wouldn't encourage anyone to like live the lifestyle that I lived for that time that I was out here. But at the same time, this might be a bit controversial. There are certain things about some of the psychedelic drugs I took when I was a kid that may have made me more open to some of the concepts of recovery that I've been able to enjoy in my life today. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it.
I love that.
Ways of looking at things.
I love that. So then Dave, because we don't have a lot of time left, but you turned your life around, man. I mean, you went from dirtbag. I mean, let's face it. I can say that. You went from dirtbag to community leader. You are a community leader. You are a leader. You are well respected. I meet people in Lancaster. They're like, oh my gosh, Dr. Malloy, holy shit. Like Chris Dreisbach, he was on here.
Yep.
And I meet people all over, and they love you. What do you do now for a living? Just real concise. What do you do for a living?
So part of my recovery journey in 2005, I was a patient at a recovery center, and there was a gentleman that worked there. There was a person in crisis, and he called me. He was like, yo, I need your help. I had never met this dude from a can of paint. His name's Campy. God bless him. He's a huge mentor to me. There was a guy in crisis. He called me into this office, and within 5 minutes, we had him laughing, and then mobile crisis came and took him away. He was in psychosis. And Campy turned to me and was like, whatever just happened there, you need to go to college, because that was...
And that was in 2007, because you did go to college. You got a degree. You graduated from?
Temple University.
Temple Made.
That's my alma mater.
At what age were you?
So I graduated. I went back to school at 32. I got my bachelor's degree in 2010.
So this dirtbag kid from outside of Ocean City, New Jersey, who ended up 7 years in the streets, smelling for a year in a dune buggy, you ended up getting your degree from Temple, and you are now doing what?
So I work for a company that works in Kensington, Marquee. I'm the executive director of mobile services down there. And that's how you and I got to know each other, from like just trying to work together to see
Outreach.
what we can do to help folks that are out here struggling. What I can tell you is, again, it's one of them things, man. Like, I don't care what anybody says. You can do anything you set your mind to. I mean, listen, I attribute a lot of me getting through graduate school and working full time. I owe all of that to my wife, Shay. She supported me and stood by me through all of that. Matter of fact, when I think back on it, she was at my graduation, 8 months pregnant, about to give birth to my son. And then I think like I took a year off, and then I got my master's degree, and a year after that, then my daughter was born. So like, I think that's the biggest message, the takeaway that I could give anybody, is that it's entirely possible that you can enter recovery, start to set a course of action in place in your life, and you could do anything. You just have to be committed to it. And one thing I'll say, I never believe the headlines, and I really appreciate the idea of like, it's nice to be welcomed, and it's nice to have good things said about me, but I also spent a good 40 minutes here talking about some of the insanity of my life.
But do you understand that insanity helps people that are out there that are going through that insanity to understand that, like, if that's where you were at that point, and you were to some of the lowest of lows in your life, and now, like, in the last few minutes that you opened up and you talked about Shay, and you talked about your kids, and you talked about where you are in your life and what you're doing.
And listen, the coolest thing...
That's who you are now.
I'd like to try to tie it up. So when I first approached my father to apologize for what I had done, he came down to visit. We went to eat. I told him my piece, said everything I needed to say. And he gave me a hug, said, I love you. We didn't talk again for a year. And I didn't know until after we spoke again, because he said, do you know how many times I've heard that from you? He's like, you know, he used to call it nickel prayers for $1 million miracles. I would make all these commitments to him. Like, when I get out this time, Dad, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And like, I can remember being in Camden County Jail, like telling people, like other guys that I was in jail with, like, we can't live like this anymore. We got to do something different. And I would get out, and 5 minutes later, like, I had no defense.
But it's all you knew.
So he wanted to see what I was doing. And about 5 years after that, I have an older brother that my dad called to ask me advice on, like, hey, what should I do with your brother? And I was like, wow. I made a commitment to him. I stuck to my commitment. I sent him money every week for years. In 2022, post-pandemic, I had the honor of like making sure my father's life was comfortable as he passed away. I went up to see him, and they looked like they were like cavemen. Like, I'm not joking, Brett. Like, he looked like fucking ZZ Top. And my father was 90 years old. And I had to do like a whole social work thing. I got my brother into a shelter. I got my dad into a nursing home. But I knew, you know, and we were taking him to the doctors. So my mom died the day after Christmas of 1995. About December 15th of 2022, I get a call, and I knew that my dad was in the hospital. For about 8 months, I was driving back and forth from here to Plattsburgh, New York. Just, you know, it was an honor for me, because you know, it's like the slow descent, and you knew it was coming, but like, I wanted him to be as comfortable as possible. It was like a way to make things right. And the doctor called me. And it was like the 18th, I want to say, or the 19th. And in my head, I knew right away. I was like, this motherfucker is going to hang on until December 26th. And he died at 12:04 in the morning, 28 years to the day that my mom died. On the same day.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, mind you, there was a blizzard. I swear, I was telling my wife, like, I will go full weekend at Bernie's, because my whole goal was I wanted my dad to be buried next to my mom. She's buried in Jersey, in Egg Harbor City. It took quite a number of days, but we were able to get him transported from up there, and then we were able to bury him. He's buried with my mom. I go down and visit every year on the day after Christmas.
That's amazing.
But that last year was like, it was all meant, like, all of that was meant to be. It was not easy. Like, that drive, I would go up there and be like, you know, and here we are a couple years later. My brother's doing well. He's got a girlfriend. They're, you know, raising her grandkids, because they're, you know, so a lot of that stuff. And it was a way for me to kind of be a piece to the family, to make those final things right from like all that horrible stuff that I shared a while ago.
I love it. And that's a way, that's almost, like I said, it's almost poetic.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to put it together, and almost like the way your life is now. So, and you said it perfect. If where you came from to where you are now, if you could do it, anything is possible. It's possible for anyone.
I'll say, to me, I know the feeling of, like, you know, sitting in Friends Hospital and some happy schmo comes in to talk about how great your recovery can be. Like, I know that feeling of like, oh, that's a bunch of shit. That'll never. And because I also know the shame that I was starting this when we started talking today about like what that feels like to truly be disconnected from humanity. But I can say with absolute certainty, if you just get out of your own way and start to take some actions that you might not even believe in, things could start to snowball. And before you know it, things could really be changing in your life, sometimes in spite of yourself.
And you're a good example of that. And I'll tell you what, my friend, there's never enough time to unpack everything we want to unpack on these shows. But I would really invite you back to unpack some more and talk some more about
100%.
what you do. And thank you for doing what you do. And thanks for sharing all that, because, you know, your story is going to help somebody else, and that's for sure.
No,
so
thank you for having me.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate you. And everybody else out there, always remember, whatever it is you stand for, be a voice. This is Bert Carpenter on Usula Media. Have a great rest of your day.